Welcome to the PR Bunker Podcast, the war room for PR, marketing, and media strategy. Hosted by me, Don Martelli, former reporter turned PR and marketing strategist with over 20 years of experience in reputation management, media relations, and brand positioning. Each episode, I cut through the noise and get real about the challenges and opportunities in PR, marketing, and corporate communications. I sit down with innovators, disruptors, big thinkers, and challengers who are reshaping industries, breaking the rules, and making headlines. Whether it's navigating a crisis, crafting the perfect pitch, or building a brand that actually sticks, this is where strategies are built, stories come to life, and reputations are won or lost. If you're in the trenches of PR and marketing, buckle up. This is the PR Bunker. No fluff, no bullshit, no spin, just the real talk you need to lead in today's media landscape. Let's get started. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining me yet again here down in the PR Bunker. Today, we have a very special guest, somebody who I've known for quite some time, who's helped me a variety of ways throughout my PR career. When you talk about networking and being connected, Karen Reynolds is one of those people who I've just, I keep on my short stack of Rolodexes that I just know if I need a brain around something, a connection to be made or an idea, Karen's always somebody who I've gone to over the years. So Karen Reynolds, thank you so much for joining me down here in the PR Bunker.
Thanks so much for having me, Don. I'm really excited and not going to lie, a little nervous.
Nah, don't be nervous. We're friends here, so it's all good. So for those of you who don't know, Karen is, wasn't a former journalist, hasn't spent a ton of time on the agency set. However, you have.
I'm a former journalist. I have a journalism degree from UNH.
See,
I
now I'm
wrote
getting
for
you out of
the
your shell.
Sun Journal in Lewiston, Maine.
There you go. See, so you are an old salty scribe.
Ringer for the Portsmouth Herald to cover high school sports. So
all right. So perfect. All right. So I stand mistaken. Okay. So yes, a journalist, but where I was going with this is that you don't have to be a full-time journalist like folks are today to be a good storyteller. And for me, what I've experienced with our relationship is over the years that you connect people, you tell stories, and you always have purpose with the folks that you're connecting. But one, I would love to, tell our audience from your journalism days to today, give us a little bit of salt and pepper of your journey and what you're doing now.
Sure. So I'm a New Hampshire girl, grew up in New Hampshire, went to UNH, went on the big trek to Boston, which for me was big city. And that my journey began with Business Wire. And so I started at Business Wire in 1997. I held 7 or 8 different roles there, from editorial to operations to customer service to sales to basically running the office when I was my final role there. For 90% of it, I loved it. And so I can't complain. But the thing I loved the most was public relations people. And I found that when you are working with public relations people, you're working with the most responsive people in the world, because they cannot leave an email unanswered or a voicemail unresponded to. So God bless them.
It gives us the hives. It gives us, when my inbox is full, it gives me the hives. Unread Slack messages, text messages. Oh my God.
Yeah, because when I pivoted to other roles, I was serviced IT and HR and found I couldn't quite figure out why nobody was responding to me, only to discover that it was, in fact, that I had this amazing connection to the public relations community, and it brought me back. And so post Business Wire, a few other roles that were really fun and unique, kissed a few frogs, and then found myself back in the public relations space where I feel I belong, and currently very happily representing a business, an up and coming business called Reportable, which I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about. But that's my journey in a nutshell.
I love that. So Reportable. I mean, there's a million tools us PR people can use. My first entrance to tools were like piece of paper into this thing called the fax machines and press releases out to reporters. And then when fax machines had the ability to bulk send press releases to people, I was like, this is great. And then PR Newswire, Business Wire showed up, and all of a sudden, whoa, I can send this document via this email thing to some lady named Karen who's going to get it out in the world. And oh my God, it actually works. So, and clearly today, between the GPTs, the Perplexities, the HubSpots, Salesforces, there's a million tools out there. Tell me about Reportable. What does it do, and why do PR people like me need to use it?
Sure. So there is so much value in the Newswire business in general. And again, I go back to those fax days. In fact, my first role at Business Wire was pulling from this fax machine and retyping in those press releases so that they could go out over the wire.
Holy
so
smokes,
yes,
that's brutal.
Hello World predated
Wow.
the email.
As we all should. I remember my worst assignment at the Globe was transcribing the calls that people would make to us to transcribe the bird sighting column. Awful. So we share that in comics. So keep going. Reportable.
Yeah. So Reportable is really a modern take on the press release distribution process through the lens of tell the story, tell it well, and don't be limited by words, by the cost of multimedia, by basically the airline approach that a lot of the news wires have to how a small business or a nonprofit might be able to tell a story. So we are not a large distribution network for disclosure. We're not going to service the NASDAQ and New York Stock Exchange, but the wire services that do that are also typically servicing the small businesses and nonprofits and putting them all into the square peg into the round hole. And we're trying to change that narrative to, well, what if there was a different peg for the nonprofits and small businesses? And so we're in the process of both developing that, but the primary solution right now is ready to go for businesses that really want to have more of that targeted approach for what a private company needs. They don't need to be on Fidelity. They don't need to be on these expensive websites because they don't have ticker symbols. And so we're taking a different approach to that.
Love it. I love the fact that there's a focus on storytelling, because I know, today, we're all 30 seconds away from our next distraction. And sometimes you need to get news out and you hope that your integrated approach between email, social, word of mouth, that kind of works. But sometimes you just need a little extra gasoline on that fire. And it sounds like that Reportable is kind of that tool. I personally have used it recently for a client of mine that was in the legal field looking to reach particular people to consider getting involved in a class action lawsuit. And it really worked out well for us to be able to say, hey, look, there's this issue going on that you don't know is actually happening. You should get a hold of. And, it really became one, it was super quick and easy. I mean, I called you randomly. I think it was on the Thursday or Friday. I was like, Karen, I'm kind of freaking out. I need help. Karen was like, I got you. Give me your stuff, get you all set up. And you and the team did a masterful job. And so, I mean, ease of use is great. Affordability, ridiculously affordable. And the fact that it just worked, and the format's also kind of cool too. So it has that kind of doesn't feel like it's pay for play, but it doesn't feel like a traditional wire service. It just feels like it's just scriptive. It just felt very much like a tool built in 2025, if you will. How long has the company been around?
About 8 years. In development a little before that, but I think started really hitting the ground about 8 years ago. And I joined about a year and a half ago. But I had met the founder back in my Business Wire days through, of all things, networking.
There you go.
And we had a really good rapport, and I had given some advice on some ideas that I had heard through the grapevine were things PR people were consistently asking for. And I think, it was really fun when we reconnected to know that I had known him since the beginning.
That's cool. Can you spill the tea a little bit? Like, what's next for Reportable? What's going on now, just with media and content is one thing, but in a year, 2, 5, I mean, who knows where we're going to be in 10 years? Like, where do you see the evolution of the platform based on those needs you're hearing from PR people?
So it really breaks down into two pieces. There's the press release side, which I'm really excited to tell you about, but then there's also the monitoring and analytics side. And that's been our growth path in the last year and a half. So the T there is AI is great, but it's never going to deliver the product that an agency can wrap in a bow and send to their client. There needs to be a human element to it. And it's either going to be a painstaking effort for those agencies to take that report and, again, reshuffle it, or whatever the case may be, fix the sentiment, fix the share of voice, or they can assign it to a service like ours, which has really developed this hybrid model. And so we embrace everything there is about AI for capturing the data, pulling the information, keeping it as automated and simple and cost effective as possible. But then we combine that with an analytics team that does that legwork so that we deliver a more bespoke, custom report to the client, to the needs of their KPIs, that can also be white labeled, right? So we can present it as just powered by Reportable, but it's their work, and we're behind the scenes supporting public relations agencies and corporations directly. So that I hope you can see I'm particularly excited about.
Yeah.
On the press release side, What we're trying to find is, where does syndication and news population fit into the next generation? Because there's so many bots recreating news, right? Is if we're feeding into something and then they're auto-populating with a story, is that earned media? Is that sold media? How do we connect those dots for the public relations community, who I think, based on the multiple places where I track conversations, that's a real question going on in the marketplace right now.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's the age-old question. We'd love to hire you, Don, to do this PR campaign, but what are the results I can expect? Well, you can expect, highly caffeinated, fast-talking conversations. The fact that I will annoy the heck out of reporters to hopefully get them coverage. But unless you are curing cancer and literally have uncovered the secrets to the world, getting media coverage will never be guaranteed. So, to support PR people, whether in-house or an agency, to understand the impact of the story, which is basically reach, conversations, awareness, action to some degree, if people like signing up for a class action lawsuit or supporting a nonprofit or supporting this campaign or enrolling in a program. So those CTAs are really important, but it's an age-old problem. It's really hard to measure things like share of voice and reputation. It can be done. There are tools that do that. But I think you need the other person on the side of the phone or the Zoom, for example, has to understand that it's not a one-to-one to a sale. Right? There's nothing you can kind of concretely put your hands on. So,
yeah.
But I think there's, as influencers in this space and clients become more of age like us, there's an understanding of these veterans of this business, I would say, understand the importance of things of share of voice and sentiment, things like that. So it's good to see that you're all focused on supporting the PR folks in that storytelling of the story effort, if you will.
Absolutely.
So, speaking of stories, Karen and I, and when I launched my own company a year and change ago, I've been networking with people, having conversations, and Karen's always one of those folks I always go back to. And we were having a conversation one day and kind of telling her about the PR bunker and my focus on mission-driven, impact-focused work and types of clients. She said, cool, I'll keep you in mind. I know that I'd love to get to this in a second, but you organize people and have conversations in the community, so you're more of a gatherer of folks as well. But you did mention, hey, look, I got a friend of mine who's got a friend who has something that may be of interest to you, which basically ended up being my role that I'm currently filling outside of the work at the PR Bunker as VP of Integrated Marketing Communications at Alignable, which is all about helping small businesses and networking, which is right up my alley. So it's super, super perfect for me. It's you are my Match.com because you allowed me to find this perfect opportunity for me. But I'd love for you to talk about what are your habits around networking? Because you are a highly networked person, and by way of doing the work you do, you just collect people over the years. But are there things you do on a daily basis, weekly basis, that just are good habits that people can learn from?
Yeah, I think so. So I am a serial LinkedIn user, and I do like networking in person. And that, again, I'm kind of a hybrid, right? And so similar to our history of our friendship and collegiality, Don, if we'd only ever met through LinkedIn, I wouldn't feel like I knew you. But that moment we've had the beer together is the moment when, okay, now I hear your voice, I see you. So it's much easier. I'm very good at names and faces when I've met you. But if I've only Zoomed with you, I'm like, who? So I do have very clear lines on virtual and in person. But LinkedIn specifically, of course, I track a lot of people in the public relations space. I do a mix of publishing my own content. I try to keep it pretty light on reportable and salesy, and much more about just things I have a lot of passions, right? I'm passionate about sports, and specifically women in sports. So I find when I publish about that, there's a community of people who are also my public relations people who seem to respond to that. So I know that that's a community that there's a connection there. I really believe in helping people when they may not know when to ask for help. And I guess the best way to describe that is I went through a tough layoff, and it was heartbreaking. It was it was a little surprising, and it sent me down a pretty dark place. And when it comes to things like LinkedIn, I knew I had the option. I could keep it really private and just pridefully try to navigate without talking about it. or I could lean in. And I made the decision to lean in and really put myself out there. I'm struggling. This happened and I'm trying to find my way out of this. And it was the public relations community that had been my customers, my clients, my support, the people I bump into at PR Club and PRSA. They reached out in hordes, and it really changed the way I saw my network, because I almost felt like George Bailey, right? Or Mr. Holland, right? I thought all this time I was just the behind the scenes person, and suddenly people were supporting me. And that changed the way I saw my network and again, my ability to network. But the long and short of it is, it led me down a different journey, which is be helpful. And be helpful all the time. Now, I think I was doing that anyway, but I wasn't being as intentional about it, because what was happening is some people would say, oh, well, go ask Karen. She knows people. Maybe you can connect. But now I'm like, hey, don't be afraid to ask me. Come to me. It's okay that you're struggling. You're not alone. How can I help you? And that has led to a lot of coffee conversations, a lot of pancakes, a lot of times when someone just needs to vent, but they need to vent to someone that is maybe neutral, right? The long and short, and I'm sorry if that, I should mention, I also like to talk a lot.
That's all good. You're in good company. I do too.
So the long and short of it is be present, be proactive. When I'm on LinkedIn, I do all of those things, but I'm always with an intention behind it of how can I help somebody? And I don't expect anything in return. It's nice when it happens and I appreciate it like nobody's business. But if it's not going to end up being that way, my cup gets full just from knowing that I helped somebody. And if that's how you operate, then it should be very natural and very easy to do.
Yeah, you're spot on with that, because for me that's the boomerang effect, right? You know, I help you, you help me, vice versa. And what happens when you extend that to what we talk about at Alignable, which is your second degree network. So you have an ecosystem of people, I have an ecosystem of people, and more than likely there's a lot of overlap there, because you know we have the same kind of friends. It's a small community, if you will. But then there's those the relationships we have where they've never met each other. So the fact that I'm at Alignable because of a second and third tier connection is just showcases the power of when you do put yourself out there, and you're honest and you have conversations, and you're always asking, like, what are you working on and how can I help? Right. And it could be just like, can you look at my resume? Can you connect me with Don? I'd love to learn more about what you're doing at Reportable. Can you connect me with Karen? No problem. Just the fact that you're like a switchboard operator, plugging in answers to people's questions. And it could be as large as giving somebody a job or giving them some hours on a project where they just got laid off so they can make some money. If you do good and you carry the white flag and be an ambassador of others, I'm a firm believer that comes back to you in spades. And if it doesn't, those that are taking advantage of it aren't meant to be in your world to begin with, right? If they're taking more than they're giving, then see you later. But I do feel like there's, between the ability for us to connect digitally at any given time in seconds is great because it allows us to save time. But those that spend the time in person and doing things like this and having conversations that are a little more meaty, it just adds to that stickiness of the relationship, which is why, like, you and I have talked recently in the past handful of weeks, just back and forth on some stuff. But prior to that, it was kind of quiet. Then we talked about the Alignable gig. And then prior to that, probably months, right? But like, good relationships stick. And then like when you get back in the room, the virtual room or in person, you're picking right back up and you're talking about the Red Sox, you're talking about women in sports and my daughter playing field hockey and softball. Like it's more natural, and business gets done as an aside, but the relationship is what matters.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And, fun fact, Don, I think you know this, but you're a Revere guy, and my mom and dad are Revere folks. That's where they met. They went to Revere High. So that, I think, is probably how I first remember always remembering you, because you speak exactly the way they do.
I don't know what you're talking about, Karen. Revere. It's Kelly's roast beef.
So being in the Pia Banca is really fun for me.
Everybody's welcome down here. A shout out Revere. So I know outside of your work connecting people and Reportable, you do other things that align, pun intended, with connecting people. Talk to us about that a little bit.
Sure. I think it really, ever since I was part of the PR Club, which was Pub Club back then, and was on the board for many, many years and got to know people on a more one-on-one basis, I always found that when people were job hunting, sometimes they were doing it privately, right? They didn't want everyone to know that they were on the hunt, but if you hear about something, can you mention it to me? Again, I've always been an advocate for helping people connect the dots. What I started in the last year was a group, mostly through LinkedIn, that we call it the Boston PR Breakfast Club. And it was a way to get a bunch of people that were all, again, displaced, looking for new roles, to connect on some of these topics. And we found some trends. So for instance, we found that, there might be a little bit of ageism going on in hiring right now, right? Not necessarily a surprise, but maybe it made a few people feel better when they realized they weren't the only ones. Now, do we have a solution for that? No. But not feeling alone can be, in and of itself, a really meaningful thing to get over, right? That you're not alone. So we started this group, and it began with meeting very old school at an IHOP on Soldiers Field Road in Brighton, where I think a lot of people spent their college late nights. And we'd gather about once a month, and sometimes we'd have 6 or 7 people, sometimes we'd have 2 or 3, but it was a chance for everyone to kind of just talk about what's happening in the technology of HR. Is anyone having trouble getting their resumes through? And suddenly we had an idea. Well, maybe we need an expert to help us with this. So we ended up partnering with the PR club, and we did a full webinar with 2 recruiters who gave really actionable advice on, this is what's really happening in HR software. These are the do's and don'ts. Here's some advice. And while we all know that most jobs are going to come from networking, they're not going to come from a resume through HR software. As someone who's job searching, you can't not do it. Right? Like, again, they have to respond to their emails, and they have to respond to those job postings. So why not improve your chances? So we tried to find a solution. And then we said, well, if most people are going to find their jobs through LinkedIn, how can we do a better job of helping people with their profiles? So once again, we put together a webinar, and a very good friend of mine who's a career coach volunteered her time to do a full webinar on best practices for improving your LinkedIn profile when you're job hunting. And we had about 15 people on the call. She answered one-on-one questions. She took them through an entire case study of how to, again, the do's and don'ts. So these are some of the ways that I try to connect people. And then finally, I think the thing that is the third and foremost really important was recognizing that I can't be all things to all people. Like, I'd love to, but I'm actually not the right solution for most people, because I'm not actually a practitioner. I haven't been through a lot of the experiences. So I started a mentor program, and it's really in its infancy still, but it helped me reconnect with some old friends. That's actually how I reconnected with Christina, because I had put out a kind of the bat signal, and she very obviously responded and said, I have a little free time. I could help a couple job seekers. I introduced her to a couple different people who were in a space that they were looking that matched her expertise. And that's how she and I reconnected, because she's on the West Coast. We hadn't talked in a while, and it was like we picked up right where we left off.
And for sidebar, Dawn to Karen to Christina to Chris, who I work with at Alignable. Shout out, Christine.
Absolutely. Huge shout out to Christina. But if you look at it from that perspective, it was that idea, like, and I actually have this spreadsheet where, like, I have people connecting who would be a good mentor for this person and for that person. Wow. When they were at agency and they went in-house, that's what this person wants to do. Wow. So that would be a good journey for them to talk about. So we need
to find somebody who can build this as a platform.
I couldn't agree more, because it was...
Sidebar, and anybody listening to this that's a developer, UX type, Karen, find a way to trademark this, because if it's just like it's like basically taking, like, so Lineable, for example, does that for business referrals to small business owners. LinkedIn does it at a global scale, but if it's just specifically for mentorship around your career, and that's all it did, brilliant. So whoever's listening to this, if you're still in the idea about coming after you, but Karen, get the website going, get the trademark, find a UX person, and let's get it done. It's a brilliant idea. I love that.
Well, thanks. And interestingly enough, that's the thing about me. If it could be solved with technology, I'm going to have a spreadsheet and still try to solve it the old-fashioned way, right? Probably would still have a Rolodex if it was realistic to have one.
Love it. Yeah, we all do it. It just sits on our phone these days.
Exactly.
Well, good stuff. Towards the end of the back end of the chat here, but I would be remiss not to ask you, in the stack of our 4 Boston, well, 5 teams, right? So Bruins, Celtics, Patriots, Red Sox, and the Revolution. Where's your fandom these days? What do you like coming out of the Red Sox camp? You got Mike Vrabel in New England, the coach of the Patriots. Like, where are you at with your Boston sports fandom? Because I know you're a nut. So where you're at?
All right, there's going to be some surprises here. but a couple aren't going to be surprising.
All right.
My number one right now is the Celtics, and it's not a bandwagon thing. Believe me when I tell you, because I cried green a lot. And I did grow up in the Bird McHale era, and of course enjoyed that immensely. I loved the 2008 team a lot. The big three. I don't think I could love someone more than Kevin Garnett.
Love KG. Love KG. Shout out KG.
Yeah, but this generation is just mind-boggling to me. But what is different about my fandom now is how much of a fan I am of all of the NBA, where my natural instinct used to be to hate the opposing teams. I can't do that right now because
I don't know. I can't like the Lakers. I can't like them.
no,
I disagree.
I'm not
I
saying
can't like the Lakers. I hate 'em.
It's different. It's different.
It's funny because Alignable, our color is purple. And all I can think about every single time is the Lakers. I'm like, if we introduce yellow as the color palette, I'm quitting. No way.
Fair enough. And believe me when I tell you, I will never cheer for them. However, the combination of LeBron and Luka and what just happened with that blockbuster trade, combined with the renaissance in Golden State and OKC, I mean, SGA is an unbelievable talent. Like, I never used to talk about, like, I don't really remember Kobe because I didn't watch anyone but the Celtics. Now I just feel more enlightened. Like, I can appreciate the players from across the league. And I love that about this new generation, that we have what we have and I love it, but I also love how we match up against these other teams. And I'm so much more informed.
I can get a whiff of a Karen's NBA podcast kind of vibe going on here. We should totally. I mean, why not? Karen's hot takes in the NBA. It'd be great.
Well, my daughter and I do the halftime show. We like to do our own version of it. It's a lot of fun.
You should be recording those. You should be recording them, and you should be posting them, Karen. Absolutely, do it.
To be continued.
Let's do it.
Here's the rest of the surprises, though. So I am still a Red Sox fan. However, I slowed down in my faithfulness because I couldn't get over the 2018 season when they might have broken some rules. And it bothered me to a level that kind of I've struggled with for at least 7 years.
Got it.
But I did watch the game yesterday. I was excited. I found myself kind of getting that excitement back, but that excitement had been gone. I don't have Nesson right now. I only listen to the games on the radio. So I'm getting there. And I'm still a baseball fan in general, of course, youth and, across the board.
Course.
Everyone knows, I'm big into women in sports, and baseball is a huge thing for me. So I'm getting there with the Red Sox. Now, Bruins, I've never really been a hockey fan. I went to UNH, go Wildcats. Maybe went to one game. So just didn't grow up in a hockey family.
Got it.
But I do want them to be the winners. The Patriots is where I'm really going to throw you a curveball. I hate them.
Oh, there you go.
And I'll tell you exactly why.
Yeah, tell me why.
You know how you hate the Yankees? That's why I hate the Patriots, because they act like the Yankees.
Yeah, well, just because winning's tough.
Yeah. And
well, we did. I would say that those days are now gone, right? Because we stink.
Yeah,
we stink.
Yeah.
But 20 years of us being obnoxious, absolutely.
There's just this thing about them. I just don't like them, and I don't like the way they treat their players.
Yeah, there's that too.
Again, I don't get super into it. What I love is I get my Sundays back. We don't have a Sunday ritual in the winter, so we get to do other fun stuff.
There you go. What I find interesting about this is the professional sports now in Boston. I feel like it's a third chapter, right? Because we had, like, you think about the late 70s, 80s, you had the Birds, the Bruins playing well but not winning, the 90s, and then 2000s clearly was dominated by the Patriots, and the Red Sox had success. And then, like, after that decade or 2 decades of just between the Bruins, Celtics, and the Patriots, all 4 teams basically winning, the Bruins in 2011, all of those old faces are now gone. It's a whole new wave. So, like, my kids that grew up in an environment when they were young kids, all we did was win. And then they've gone through now a period where, like, we weren't winning, but now we're starting to win again. So it's like this very cyclical thing.
Mm-hmm.
I asked it. Good.
Fear that just like 1918 used to be chanted, that 2018 will be chanted 50 years from now.
Maybe. The beauty of that's the beauty behind the story of sports, right? Like, we live and die by these sort of experiences, and it brings people together. Like you and I, other than the Revere connection and our professional relationship, there's things that just connect people, and that's the beauty of networking and staying in touch, and all the things that I do with my work at Alignable or the PR Bunker and the work you're doing at Reportable. It's just about really helping people, telling good stories, whether it be Lakers, Celtics, Bruins, Canadians, Patriots, Giants. You go down the line, it's all good storytelling. But back to the professional thing real quick. If people want to learn more about Reportable, how can they do that?
Sure. So, I mean, of course, you can always go to the website. Our website is reportablenews.com, but it really comes down to reach out to me, right? Let's have a conversation. I'll take you through what you're looking for and help you navigate where in the Reportable ecosystem we might be able to help you. Because we really are functioning more in a much more consultative way because of the nature of what we're trying to build. So
cool.
Have a conversation.
Very good. And she's very findable on LinkedIn too and other platforms. So just Google her and you'll come across Karen. Just search under Queen and she'll be right there. Well, Karen, thank you for joining me on the PR Bunker. We definitely will do this again. And I'll be tuning in to you and your daughter's NBA halftime podcast when you get that launched. And not only your networking or your mentoring ecosystem idea, which I absolutely love. Keep up the good work. Keep connecting people. And thank you again for all your help over the years with my clients. Wire services, my last minute requests that were a pain in the ass, but you got them done. And obviously for the opportunity that I've been so thankful for in the last handful of months here. So thanks for joining me. Appreciate the time. Thank you for joining me on the PR Bunker. Hope you enjoyed this episode with Karen Reynolds of Reportable. If you are in public relations and looking for a different type of service to tell your story, unlike the traditional wire services, give Reportable a look. Reach out to Karen Reynolds at Reportable. You can find her on LinkedIn and elsewhere. In the meantime, appreciate you tuning in. If you like this episode, feel free to share it, like, and subscribe. Until next time, we out.